Hey there, it's Paige from the impactcopywriter.com, and today I'm going to show you how to format your email newsletters so that you increase the likelihood that they actually get read by your subscribers. Now, formatting might seem like not such an important thing, but it's actually more important than you may be realizing. And that's because, once someone's opened your email newsletter or any email really from you, that's just part of the battle, as we say. And that's because once they open that email, depending on kind of the first impression that email gives, that determines whether or not someone's going to actually read it or they're just going to hit delete. So, imagine opening an email that looks relatively interesting based on the subject line and then seeing this massive wall of text and just like a huge, huge, huge paragraph. And I mean, if you think about what that experience is like, of course, like as a subscriber, as the reader of that email, it's discouraging you from actually consuming whatever's going on in that email. And so, as a business owner who's using email newsletters, strategically with purpose, you want to increase the likelihood that once that email gets opened, that it actually gets read. And so today we're going to focus on how to format, your email structure, and also a little bit, we'll dive a little bit into how to format your text to increase the likelihood that someone will want to read once they open. Now, we're going to be focusing on the context of businesses who sell offers like digital training programs, like courses, workshops, services even. So it's not really going to be focused on more the e-commerce product-based context because, if you think about like your favorite clothing retailer, those emails look very different. They're very image-based. It's a lot about the visuals. But, on the other hand, if you're selling something that's not about the visuals, that's more of a digital training program or a course or a workshop or a coaching package or professional services and things in that arena, then it's less about the visuals, it's more about the message. So that's really what we're going to focus on for this video. I'm going to be demoing this process in ActiveCampaign because that's my email tool of choice. Just keep in mind that you can use all of the principles that we talk about here in whatever email autoresponder kind of email service provider that you're using. So I'm actually going to approach this by setting up a template first. And that's because you're going to want to have, all of these kind of formatting, let's say, principles or structure in place for every email that you send. So it makes a lot of sense to go ahead and set up a template that's reflecting all of those principles, so that you don't have to keep, redoing the email formatting every time you send a new email. So in ActiveCampaign, I'm in the Campaigns tab. That's the second one here from the top. And I have selected Manage Templates. And from this screen, we can actually create a new template. So I'm going to click the Create a Template button at the top here. And I'm just going to start from scratch. Now we're going to select the standard template type and continue. All right, now ActiveCampaign is going to kind of load some, templatized components into the email. So the first thing I'm going to do is to delete this image here. And I'm going to leave the text because we're going to actually use the text in every email. And so we will format this here in a few minutes. Now, if for some reason you accidentally deleted this text block here, you can simply drag a new text block onto the email by clicking this component and dragging it into your email. All right, the first thing we're going to do formatting wise is to change the width of our email. So I like to use a little bit narrower column, something around 500 pixels. And that's so that the eye takes a shorter path from this side of the line to this side of the line and back. And it's just a lot easier if you compare two emails side by side and one has a narrow column and one spans the width of the screen. It's a lot easier on the eye when you're on a desktop computer to read the narrower column. And so that's a technique we also use in sales pages and landing pages, is that we make, text that spans, that's in paragraphs that spans across the page. We make very narrow columns. All right, now we're going to add a little bit of formatting to the text itself. And so I've got the text box selected. I'm going to add some padding. And so padding is really cushion inside of the text box. I'm going to add 10 pixels to all sides. And that just gives it a nice little cushion so that there's some nice white space around the text, no matter what screen that it's showing up on, whether it's tablet or desktop or mobile. Now, to give this more of a feel of a real email, I'm going to grab some lorem ipsum text, and you can just Google lorem ipsum generator and find some lorem ipsum text. And let me get a few paragraphs here. And we'll copy and paste. Let's just try one to start with. We'll copy and paste that into our email just to give us more of a kind of a feel, because this is going to be demo text, right? It's just going to load automatically when you load this template up. So you're going to change this, but we do want to have something in there, and we do want to go ahead and format it so that when you paste your email copy in, that's already formatted correctly. I'm going to add one more paragraph because I wanted to give a feel of like a real email newsletter. All right, now we're going to increase the size of our text. You can see clearly the 12-point text size is just really too small. I have found, a happy medium is somewhere around 15 or 16, and you want to avoid going too large. So you want to be big enough that it's easy to read, but not so large that you kind of look like you're reading a children's book. We want to find somewhere that's in the happy medium range. So play around with it a little bit to see what looks the best in your email service provider. Like I said, I tend to go with 15 or 16, and this looks pretty good here. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this, and I'm going to change the line height as well. So I like to do a line height of somewhere between 150 and 200. So 200% would be about a double space, and then 150 would be like a 1.5 space. I really like this 175. There's a lot of cushion here between the lines. So again, just play around with that and see what looks the best, given whatever font you're using. Now you can go ahead and change the font. I stick with the standard Arial. We have, all the basic fonts here in ActiveCampaign. Then go with something that's just really easy to read and still has kind of the feel of your brand. One thing you can also do in ActiveCampaign is you can customize the link color just by, inputting the hex code for the color, whatever your brand colors are, or by, clicking and dragging around and selecting different color families. So my link color it's a sort of purple. I don't have the hex code handy right now, so I'm just going to select one just by clicking and dragging around. And so anytime you put in a link, it will be the link color that you selected. So I'm not going to add any borders to this email. So I'm going to leave these kind of the default settings. So no border at all. And then I like to have the email in a center alignment. So, if I click left alignment, then it's going to align the email. If you're on a desktop, it's going to align it to the left. I find that it stands out more because it's in the center of whatever, email reader, whether it's Gmail or whatnot. It's in the center, so it stands out more and it doesn't bleed into anything else. So I like to go with the center alignment. In terms of the spacing here at the top, I like to leave the first little bit of space here. It gives it a nice cushion in the desktop view, and you can see that it says it's hidden on mobile devices. So I just leave that, and that comes, already loaded in when you select Start from Scratch. But there is a second one, and it was probably what was separating the image from the text block. So I'm going to delete the second one because we only need the first one. So if I hover over the gear icon, I can delete this, select yes. All right, so now we just have the one kind of space here. Now let's continue on with formatting our text. And something we won't talk about in depth in this video is, about email copywriting, and formatting the text is a big part of that. But one thing that I do want to mention, and you can already go ahead and input into your template, is that you want to make sure you're not using huge paragraphs, right? So you want to use one-line sentences, short sentences, two-line sentences, and keep those varied. So you're going to want to add breaks. You can see this is a complete sentence. And of course, this is lorem ipsum, so keep that in mind. But I do like to go ahead and add these kind of formatting things in the template to remind you when you're inputting your email that you need to pay attention to how the email is formatted in terms of line length and such. So we're going to cause a break here. So we've got one sentence, but this one spans 2 lines. This one spans 1. This one spans 1. And so you can see it starts to make the email a lot easier to read when it's kind of spaced out. I'm going to go ahead and finish kind of spacing out this email using the short sentence formatting, and then we'll come back and finish up. All right, now I've added some spaces just to kind of break up the, big blocks of text. And of course, keep in mind that where you decide to add your spaces will depend on your message of your email. But just remember that you don't want those huge blocks of text. You want to keep it to, 2 lines, 1 line, 3 lines max when you are formatting that email so that it's really easy to get started and keep going. So it's not super oppressive when you open or super discouraging, let's say, when you open an email and instead of seeing a huge wall of text of maybe like 20 lines, that feels like, formatting an email this way just helps people get started and keep going. And it's more encouraging than big walls of text. All right, one thing I'm going to do here at the bottom is add some space because I like to give some space between the end of the email and this kind of mandatory unsubscribe button at the bottom. All right, so in our kind of component toolbar, you can see we have a spacer. So we're just going to drag that in underneath the text. And then we're going to increase the line height. So just click on it so it opens up the options. And I do something like 200 to 300 just to give it like a really nice cushion here at the bottom. And that way they're focused on the message. And then if someone's really looking for the unsubscribe button, then it's there, right? But it's not right under your email. So keep in mind, we're not really trying to hide it. We're just trying to make sure that the email message is the focus of the email when it comes to formatting. One other thing you can add is your logo. So just select your image component and drag it either into the top or to the bottom. Personally, I like adding the image at the bottom. Now, once I've selected my logo, I'm also going to add some padding just to give it some cushion around the sides. I want to make sure I have at least like 20 pixels of padding on the side. And actually, I'm going to make it smaller because I like a little bit smaller size here. And I'm going to center it. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger than that. So you can play around with the look. You can have it, before the spacer. I like to do it at the bottom so it's more like a footer than underneath the main email. Something you could also add is a change your email preferences style button, or you could add something about sharing it to a friend. So there are these extra little bits of customization that you can add simply by adding a text block. And then personalize, so you'll click the personalize button. Then underneath the message, you'll have a lot of options. So they can update their subscription account. That's where they change their email. They can unsubscribe from all lists, or they can unsubscribe specifically from the list that they're on getting that email. And they can share with a friend. So there's a lot of options there. Now, I like to keep it really minimal. So a lot of times I don't have these extra bits at the bottom of my emails. So at this point, you might be thinking, well, what about images? So if you remember from earlier in this video, I said this was not an e-commerce style email to where visuals is a huge part of that. So if you think when you're buying clothing, when you're opening those kinds of emails, the email is mostly images because that is what people are looking at. They're looking at the styles, that's what's going to get people wanting to go shop, on their online store. But when you're selling things that aren't that tangible, then it's more about the message than it is about the image. So in a lot of times we don't have images unless they support the message of the email. So if you're using images all the time and yes, I need an email or I need an image in my email template, then go ahead and add one in and just, drag it in and leave it blank. It'll just leave a placeholder like this, just leave it like that, and it'll leave a placeholder for that image. And you can also add, some space if you want to make sure you have some nice space. between your content, email content, and your image. You can add one before and after. But if you're not using images a lot, I recommend just to, not include that in your template. And then you won't have to delete it every time you start an email. So, keep in mind, customize this template to fit what you're using when you send emails most often. The last thing we're going to do is just customize a few settings. So click on the gear icon here at the top corner, and you can change the name of your email template. I'm going to name this newsletter version 4 because I have a few other versions already created in my account. You can name it whatever makes the most sense for you. Mobile responsiveness is already on, so leave it that way. If you want, you can also send a test campaign or a test email to see what that template is going to look like when it actually arrives in the inbox. So you can, see it with the lorem ipsum. Now, depending on what type of account you have, you'll always be able to do a desktop preview, and you'll see what it looks like in the desktop, which is an easy way if you don't want to send a test email. And then you can also see what it looks like on a mobile device just from that view alone. And then if you have a certain type of account, then you might also be able to do the email client preview. And of course, for an email template, the spam check is not really relevant. You'll just want to check that for each email that you send because it will depend heavily on the specific words and things that you use in your actual email content. So once you have your email set up, you have your narrow column, you have your text, your dummy text formatted, you have your logo in, you have your spacing, anything extra that we discussed that you want to have in there. Once you're finished, all you have to do is save and exit. And now you have a template that you can use every time you want to send an email newsletter or any sort of email really, but this is specifically for email newsletters. Anytime you want to send one of those, you already have all those formatting principles for readability, increasing the likelihood that people are going to actually read that email once they open it. That's already set up for you. So you save a lot of time. You're ticking all those boxes beforehand, so you don't have to remember that stuff every time you send a new email. If you'd like to try ActiveCampaign, make sure you look for the link below this video or somewhere around this video. And if you would like to kind of sample my emails, to learn more about copywriting, then I highly recommend that you join my email newsletter, and you'll actually see, what the email newsletters look like from the inside as a subscriber. Happy emailing!